Hello, and welcome to the Eldritch Collection. My name is Aaron Peterson, and I will be your curator. Today we're talking about the 2019 film, Color Out of Space. It's directed by Richard Stanley, and it stars Nicolas Cage, Joely Richardson, and Madeleine Arthur. And as I assume you know, it's based on the short story by H.P. Lovecraft. It was adapted for screen by the director Richard Stanley and a few others. So let's start off with what I liked about the film. And the first thing that I really appreciated about the film was how faithful it was to the original short story. There just aren't that many directly adapted short stories from H.P. Lovecraft that have made it to film, at least not in any mainstream sense. There's been Reanimator, and that's the only one I could think of right off the top of my head. I'm sure there's more, but as far as like an actual adaptation, that's the only other one I can think of right now. Of course, this is primarily because they're short stories, which are notoriously hard to adapt for film. Just, I don't know, have any of you guys seen The Mist by Stephen King? It's a pretty good example of why it can be very difficult to take a pretty compelling short story and turn it into an effective feature film. Let me know if you guys want me to dive deeper into that particular film in the comments below. The Color Out of Space is actually pretty faithful to the original material, and I appreciate that. The primary differences are that this story was set in 2019 when the film came out, and the story that H.P. Lovecraft wrote was set in 1927 when the short story came out. Ward, who acts as the imperfect narrator in both stories, is someone who's working for the company that will be building the dam in the area. In the original story, he's a surveyor, and in the film, he's a hydrologist. But he acts the same way. He's interested in the same things, except for one. In the short story, Nathan and his family consist of himself, his wife, and his 3 sons. In the film, it's him, his wife, his 2 sons, and 1 daughter. And Ward, the narrator, is almost romantically interested in her. It's not really clear. They're roughly the same age. It looks like she's maybe a senior in high school or just graduated high school, and it looks like he's a college student because he wears a Miskatonic University shirt, because of course he does. And there are a couple other little Easter eggs throughout the film that make reference to other pieces of Lovecraftian lore, like there's a copy of the Necronomicon in the daughter's bedroom, which I don't really appreciate, because the Necronomicon in our world is way, way different than the Necronomicon in their world. You know, if you had a copy of that, like dark magic tome, like, I think a meteorite might be the least of your worries. I also genuinely appreciated a lot of the visuals in this film. The problem with trying to depict a new color, a color that we've never seen before, is obvious. You just physically can't do it, at least not now. And the film does the best it can to emote and to suggest a color that is new and strange by using a combination of overexposure and purple pinkish hues, which aren't super common in nature. And it works, generally speaking, and it gives it an eerie haze that isn't like the spooky greens and blues that you normally see, but strange, celestial, weird colors. And those visuals work pretty well, all things considered. There's also a not-so-subtle visual homage to The Thing, which we've discussed here on this channel before as well. But the cinematography did a great job of capturing picturesque, pastoral country living, and then contrasting it with eldritch horror and strange, otherworldly colors and essences. There's also a scene that combines some more like new age technology and explores how that might have been affected by this color out of space. And it provided a scene that was visually interesting and definitely uniquely unnerving. But now, let me discuss some of the things I didn't particularly like about this movie. And one of those things, unfortunately, is the acting. The child actors had to carry a lot of this film since the parents are gone for a good chunk of it, and they didn't quite live up to the mood and the tone of the story, and they did the best they could, but it definitely felt a little cardboard at times. On the opposite end of that spectrum, of course, is Nicolas Cage.
I don't know what I believe anymore.
And he brought his current form of ridiculous, zany, over-the-top freakouts that have come to define his acting career. And it's really unfortunate, because when Nicolas Cage settles down and has a good script and plays a more realistic person, I really enjoy him as an actor. But when he's asked to scream and writhe and freak out, it just takes me out, and it either makes me laugh or it makes me cringe, and I just don't enjoy that. And unfortunately, I think the director purposely chose Nicolas Cage to have that freak out, and it just didn't work for me, unfortunately. I mean, if you compare the characters of Nathan in the short story versus the movie, there's a huge disconnect from someone who is a little bit simple, but he's definitely hardworking, he cares about his family, and he just sort of gets destroyed by the weight and the enormity of this power that came from space. Whereas Nicolas Cage becomes a cartoon character, and it just kinda sucks. Another problem is one that's pretty common with short stories when they're adapted to feature films, and that is they lose their tight, clear storytelling, and it usually becomes muddled. You know, you can look at The Mist, The Cat in the Hat, The Polar Express, and they just get weighed down by filler content as opposed to actually, embellishing the plot. And this film unfortunately suffers from that. One way they do that is they try to suggest a romantic interest between the daughter and the character, the Ward narrator character, and it doesn't really work, and it's also a little creepy because of the implied age differences. There's also a scene where the parents leave to go to the hospital that's pointless and doesn't change anything. There's also a weird mayor character who plays sort of this cartoonishly evil, incompetent local politician, and I didn't care about that either. Another example is Tommy Chong's character, who's this sort of reclusive conspiracy theorist who lives in a shack on the property. That's completely random and never really explained or anything. It does create some interesting visuals, like I referenced earlier, but why was he there? There's no good reason for it. So when the film sticks to the original story, I like it. And when they add stuff, it falls flat on its face, and it's just disappointing. And lastly, this is, of course, a critique that you'll know if you've watched any of my other videos, where I am a fan of weird fiction, and I'm not really a fan of horror. And this film definitely tries to lean further into the body horror that you'd find in a movie like Cronenberg or The Thing, and it doesn't take its time to build up the atmosphere and the eerie, unnerving qualities of the original story, and it replaces it with just gross out, over-the-top, weird horror. And because of that over-the-top element, none of the scares pay off. It's not very frightening. It's just gross, and it's a distraction from the story and a disappointment to me, unfortunately. Overall, if you're looking for a popcorn film, a kind of grindhouse-style horror film with above-average visuals, with, a muddling plot and some pretty cartoonish acting, then this could be a fun film to pick up and watch this weekend. If, however, you wanted something more nuanced, more immersive, more eerie and strange, then I don't think this is going to scratch that itch. And because of that, this film is just a strange curiosity. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to support the collection, it's simple. All you need to do is hit like, subscribe, and share this video with anyone you think would appreciate dark art and weird fiction. I'll see you next week.